Have you ever watched a vendor show up to an event and immediately start measuring the ground like they're defusing a bomb? That is not paranoia, that is survival, because the gap between what a host imagines and what a setup actually needs can ruin an afternoon. You picture a cute little table with some twinkle lights, but the vendor is thinking about generator placement, tent stakes, and whether grandma's rose bushes are about to become a casualty. This is why smart vendors send a diagram before they ever show up with a single folding chair. A simple drawing with measurements does more to prevent drama than any phone call ever could, because humans are visual creatures and we trust what we can see. If you tell someone you need a space 10 feet by 10 feet, they nod, but the second they actually see that square drawn next to their patio furniture, the light bulb goes off. Photos work the same kind of magic, almost like a dating profile, but for tablecloths and popcorn machines. A vendor who shows real setup photos from past events is basically saying, look, this is not a surprise party, this is exactly what you are getting. Hosts who skip this step often end up shocked when a coffee cart needs actual counter space and not just a card table from 1992. Minimum clearance is the unsung hero of event planning, and almost nobody thinks about it until they are standing in it. Picture a popcorn machine needing space on all sides so nobody's elbow turns into a popcorn delivery system, or a generator that needs 3 feet of breathing room so it does not overheat like a phone left in a hot car. These numbers feel small on paper, but in real life they decide whether your walkway turns into an obstacle course. Setup time is where the real myths live, because hosts often imagine vendors arriving like a pit crew at a race, snapping everything into place in 5 minutes flat. In reality, most setups need anywhere from 30 minutes to 2 hours depending on equipment, and that estimate has to be said out loud early, not whispered awkwardly as the vendor is already running late. The fix here is shockingly simple. Just put the setup window directly into the contract instead of hoping everyone telepathically agrees on timing. A lot of hosts also forget that vendors need to load in before guests even think about showing up, which means access to driveways, gates, or that one elevator that always seems to be under construction. If a host books a rooftop event but forgets to mention the freight elevator is broken, the vendor is suddenly auditioning for a furniture-moving reality show nobody asked for. Asking about access points in advance saves everyone a meltdown later. Weather is the wild card nobody wants to plan for, yet here we are. Because tents, pop-ups, and anything electrical can turn into a problem the second wind decides to show off. Vendors who explain wind and rain contingencies up front are not being dramatic. They're being the friend who tells you to bring a jacket because they checked the forecast. This kind of honesty looks like over-preparation until the one day it saves the entire event. Sound and noise footprint matter too, especially for performers or anyone running a generator that hums like a tiny angry robot. If a host expects whisper, quiet vibes but books a vendor whose equipment sounds like a leaf blower convention, that mismatch was preventable with one simple conversation about decibels. This is where plain communication beats fancy contracts every single time. History is full of event disasters caused by nothing more than miscommunication, not bad intentions. Even huge productions have learned the hard way that assuming everyone pictures the same setup leads to chaos, which is basically the professional version of two people showing up to a costume party dressed as the same superhero. The lesson translates directly to a backyard birthday or a wedding reception just as much as it does to a giant festival. Vendors who explain their visual footprint, meaning how much physical space their setup actually occupies once everything is unfolded, prevent a very specific kind of surprise. A photo booth that looks small in a brochure can suddenly feel enormous once the backdrop, lighting, and prop table are all standing in a living room. Saying the actual footprint out loud in feet and inches keeps expectations grounded in reality instead of Pinterest fantasy. A lot of hosts genuinely do not mean to underestimate space needs, they simply have never run an event before and nobody handed them a manual. This is not a character flaw, it is just inexperience, the same way nobody instinctively knows how much luggage fits in an overhead bin until they have flown a few times. A good vendor treats these moments as teaching opportunities instead of getting frustrated. Confusion usually shows up the moment numbers get vague, like saying a setup needs some space near an outlet, instead of saying it needs 6 feet of clearance and access to a grounded outlet. Vague language invites guesswork, and guesswork is where good events quietly fall apart. Specific language, even if it feels overly detailed, almost always saves time in the long run. Doubt creeps in for vendors too, especially newer ones who worry that asking detailed questions makes them look difficult instead of professional. The opposite is actually true because hosts tend to trust vendors more when they ask sharp, specific questions about layout and timing. Confidence in this business often looks like curiosity, not bravado. The most reliable trick in the entire industry is ridiculously simple. Send the diagram, send the photos, and write the clearance numbers in plain words instead of assuming common sense will fill the gaps. Common sense is not actually common. It just feels that way to the person who already knows the plan. Once everyone sees the same picture in their head, the actual event becomes shockingly smooth. So if you are running any kind of event business and want this entire process to feel less like guesswork and more like a system, if you want to learn more about how we help vendors handle exactly this kind of planning, check out the links in the description.